That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, we're going to go through, look at every single running back matchup. We're going to go through, give some injury updates, whether I think we should be starting these running backs or benching them, and realistic expectations, even with those guys at the very top end, because of course, you know, you're playing Aaron Jones. But before we get into the video, make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We are still giving away free Fantasy Flock Network hats every single video, even though we are going through and also giving them away on Patreon for anybody a part of the flock over there on Patreon, who also gets our updated rest of season rankings every single week, also gets our dynasty rankings at the same time, gets to play in dynasty leagues with us, go along with this. I mean, you get a podcast of your team broken down when you join the Patreon community, get in our group chat. You know, there's so much going on over there on Patreon, but let's give away some Fantasy Flock Network hats for free right now for people who left comments on the last video. First one coming out from Nicholas says, Mason, I was 1-4 and you convinced me to trade for AJ Brown. Now I'm 3-4. Congrats on turning that season around, my friend. Grayson says, if Henderson underperforms in 2 straight great matchups, I'm going to be pissed off. So will I, because we are very aggressive on Darrell Henderson this week. Make sure if you win that Fantasy Flock Network hat, you send me that email ASAP with your physical address. That way I can get that hat over to you. And yeah, that should be it. Let's go through and let's dive into this video. Actually, one other thing, go use promo code FLOCK and Underdog Fantasy. Thomas, can you please show the player props as we go through these matchups? Of course, on Underdog Fantasy, you can go bet over-unders on yards, touchdowns, receptions, whatever you may want to look at for these given running backs. Go use promo code FLOCK, make at least a $10 deposit, get a match on that deposit up to $100. And yeah, that should be it. Let's go through. Let's pull up these running backs. The first game we're going to be looking at, of course, will be on Thursday night. Actually, no, this video is going to be coming out on Friday, so this doesn't really matter. I'll say, as a prediction, James Conner disappoints. Aaron Jones crushes as a top 5 running back this week. Chase Edmonds surprises a lot of people, has a good performance, but I know people won't even believe that this is being recorded before, so it doesn't really matter. Let's move on to Atlanta and Carolina. And here with the Atlanta Falcons, last week officially, you had Cordell Patterson overtaking Mike Davis in snaps played. 100% that's going to be making an impact on how we're viewing Cordell Patterson. Where now, if you check out my rest of season rankings over there on Patreon, I currently have Patterson ranked as the running back 17 the rest of the way, given the fact that, I mean, the usage is exactly what you're looking for with Cordell Patterson. I really want to compare him to like a poor man's DeAndre Swift, where, yeah, I mean, Mike Davis is still going to be getting some of the carries between the 20s, just like you get with Jamal Williams in Detroit. But what makes Patterson so damn valuable is given the fact that this is a running back that is seeing every target out of the backfield. Mike Davis did not get a single target this past week. And we have seen already this season with the amount of touchdowns Cordell Patterson has had, that this is the running back that's also getting the usage in the red zone. So I know this past week coming out of the bye against the Miami Dolphins, I mean, if we're talking about just the points that he put up, Cordell Patterson was not necessarily a running back that you think you need to be drastically moving up your rankings. But I mean, you can't just look at the points. While the points were down there at 14, which was actually the lowest mark for Cordell Patterson over the past 5 weeks, if anything, in my opinion, it's the most encouraging thing we have seen from Patterson this season with his usage in this offense. So I know that he had a quote-unquote down week for his production, but I'm more excited about Cordell Patterson going forward. You play Cordell Patterson as a high-end running back 2, may have him ranked as a low-end running back 1 this week, somewhere along that border. Now, our other running back in this matchup will be Chuba Hubbard, who's coming off a very disappointing week where Hubbard himself didn't necessarily look that bad. It was more so this Carolina Panthers offense was not able to get anything going against the New York Giants. And while the Giants don't have a really bad defense, they definitely don't have one of the stronger units in the NFL that we need to be avoiding. And here with Hubbard, I will say I'm not going to be panicking too much. He did have 5 targets out of the backfield. He did have 12 carries as well. I mean, if you're looking at the backfield split, while yes, he only played about 50% of the snaps, that didn't really matter in that he did just get every single touch. So if they're maybe not going to be putting him out there on some plays where it's going to be an obvious passing down situation where they're not even going to be looking to dump the ball out of the backfield to the running back position, well, technically we would like him on the field for those drives. I still think it's more important that this is a running back that is still getting at least 15 touches every single week. And I think the matchup against the Atlanta Falcons is going to be very strong. So I'd be 100% willing to play Chuba Hubbard as well. Now, our next game, you do not need me to tell you this, but we're going to say it regardless. With Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor, they're running back 1s. You're going through and you're playing each running back in this game. And we don't even need to talk about Derrick Henry, but let's talk about Jonathan Taylor here for a second. And with Jonathan Taylor, this is a running back. I'm not going to lie. A while ago, I actually said that he was an intriguing player to look to see what we could get for in trade after he had the massive performance against the Baltimore Ravens, where he dropped about 32 fantasy points. And I was going, well, you know what? If Quentin Nelson's going to be dealing with this high ankle injury, we probably just wanted to go through and try to pivot off him, because you see Jerry Jeudy with his high ankle sprain, Jerry Jeudy missing 6 to 7 weeks to start the season. I mean, that's what we saw from Michael Thomas last year. That's what we saw from Christian McCaffrey last year. Those high ankle sprains are devastating. Go to the NBA. That's what he's had with LeBron James. So when Quentin Nelson, the best offensive lineman for the Indianapolis Colts and arguably the best offensive lineman in the entire NFL, went down with that high ankle sprain, I was very worried about what it may mean for this Indianapolis Colts offense. Well, since then, Jonathan Taylor has come out and crushed 28 points against the Texans. 20 points in a difficult matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. Clearly, this is a running back that's one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. That's why we loved him coming into the season. We also loved him coming into the season because of that elite offensive line play. Clearly, Indianapolis has turned that around. You're seeing Indianapolis also just look like a better team in general. I know their record may not necessarily reflect that, where they're currently sitting at 3-4, but all these games are close. I mean, they go through, they play a close game with the Rams, only losing by 3 points. They beat the Dolphins. They play a close game in Baltimore, where honestly, they probably should have won that game, but the Baltimore Ravens find a way to make it to overtime and come out with that win. And they also dominate the Texans. They dominate the 49ers. So Indianapolis looks like they're trending in the right direction. And with Jonathan Taylor, he has the Titans this week. That's a good matchup. Then he has the Jets and the Jags. You wouldn't be surprised if Jonathan Taylor over the next 3 weeks is a top 3 running back in fantasy. So now let's go over to our next matchup really quick. And this is going to be the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Smash Zach Moss. Get Zach Moss in your starting lineup. We called him a buy low running back this week. This is a running back that over the next 3 weeks is going to have the Dolphins, the Jags, and the Jets. He plays in the most productive offense in the NFL. At the same time, those 3 contests in particular, you'd imagine that Zach Moss is going to be coming out and playing in a game where the Buffalo Bills are going to be winning by 2+ touchdowns at the minimum. The Bills will dominate this game. In the second half, they will be looking to run the ball. They will have a ton of trips to the red zone. No Dawson Knox. Maybe they don't necessarily look to throw it as much. Maybe they just go and hand it off to Zach Moss at the 1-yard line, which of course would be fantastic given the fact that we've already seen Zach Moss have that touchdown upside this season in this elite level offense. Now, in the case of Myles Gaskin, I think we need to be making an adjustment in where we are having him ranked given the departure of Malcolm Brown from this offense. Because with Gaskin, y'all know while Malcolm Brown was healthy, I was saying, okay, Myles Gaskin, you do not want to be drafting him this year. He's just the passing down running back. He's going to be losing a ton of touches to Malcolm Brown, just like you saw with the combination of Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson in 2020. And yeah, Malcolm Brown came out. He's had pretty much every single week at the minimum 5 rushing attempts. This is a running back that was making Myles Gaskin be in that 3-man committee with Salvon Ahmed at the same time. Now, I will be saying that Ahmed is most likely going to come out and play his own role in this Miami Dolphins offense. But Myles Gaskin definitely going to be picking up extra touches with no Malcolm Brown in this game, but still probably don't want to be starting him in a really tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills, unless you want to make an argument that it's going to be similar to what you had with this Miami Dolphins team going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where they just get blown out of the water and you just have a ton of dump-off pass attempts for Myles Gaskin. Now let's go to our next running back backfield, and this is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals and the New York Jets. And with the New York Jets, you cannot start anybody this week. I mean, it's going to be laughable with Zach Wilson going down. Not saying Zach Wilson is a good quarterback by any means, but a quarterback that I've never heard his name, Mike White, coming in. I mean, going to be taking over as the starting quarterback this week for the Jets. Joe Flacco's not going to be there until week 9. So I definitely think that you need to be benching every single player you can for this Jets offense. And that's going to be including Michael Carter. Now, going over to Cincinnati, we had a question in the live stream last night. If you don't know, we live stream every single night. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell so you don't miss a live stream. We've live streamed over 100 days in a row at this point. But nonetheless, we actually had a question saying, Mason, what do you think about Joe Mixon in terms of how worried are you about with his usage in this offense? And I was saying, I don't know if worried is the right word. It's more so I'm confused and don't know what to predict with this Joe Mixon usage going forward. Because with Mixon, I liked him coming into the season, going this Cincinnati Bengals offense is going to be a lot better than most people are expecting. And the offensive line is going to be better than most people are expecting. Jamar Chase is going to make it where there are less stacked boxes. And with Giovanni Bernard leaving, there'll be a ton of targets available, and Joe Mixon will be the running back getting targeted out of the backfield. A lot of those things have come true. However, with Joe Mixon, he is not getting that Giovanni Bernard usage just added on directly. There have been some flashes like 4 receptions back in week 1, 5 receptions back in week 6. And in those 2 weeks, he comes away with like 24 fantasy points just off receiving the ball. I mean, not even including what he had as a rusher, where I'm jumping up and down going, okay, hell yes, Joe Mixon is getting that usage as a receiver that Giovanni Bernard left behind. However, there are a lot of other weeks, 1 target, 0 targets. This past week, you can't really be looking at anything in terms of snaps, touches, targets, just given the fact that that game was so out of hand that Samaje Perine, of course, was going to get a lot more work. Now, Joe Mixon is a running back that you're 100% starting, given the great matchup against the Jets, knowing that the Bengals will have no problem getting to the red zone very often. And at the same time, they're going to be leading this game, so they're not going to have to throw the ball 40-plus times. We're starting Joe Mixon. I really don't know exactly what to expect, though. Now let's go over to our next matchup where we have Nick Chubb and the Pittsburgh Steelers facing off. And Nick Chubb here, we're leading off with him because this is a running back that y'all know we've had a storied past with. I was telling everybody to avoid Chubb in the first, given the role that Kareem Hunt was going to have in this offense, and now he was going to be taking the valuable touches away in terms of the targets out of the backfield, as well as the usage in the red zone. Now, in the case of Nick Chubb, if we go back and remember who he was back in 2019 while Kareem Hunt was suspended, Nick Chubb was getting up to 3.5 receptions a game, which is massive. We know that Nick Chubb can be a receiving running back out of the backfield. The problem is he's running alongside a top 10 running back in terms of pure talent in Kareem Hunt. So it's really hard to just justify that Nick Chubb was worth that first round draft pick. Well, I can tell you this and not lose any sleep at night where I'm wondering, oh, did I say the wrong thing? No, we know this is a fact. Kareem Hunt is a significantly better running back than Dearness Johnson. You are going to have Nick Chubb, if he is 100% healthy, going through and not only getting his usual workload, but also getting extra from Kareem Hunt, where Dearness Johnson's not going to be filling that Kareem Hunt role 1-for-1. Now, don't necessarily know exactly how that's going to look this week in particular, because the latest report on Nick Chubb is he's getting in limited practices, so we don't know exactly what the knee health is like. I'd imagine that with Chubb, at the minimum, he is back to his usual workload this week, and then next week against the Bengals, that's when you see full-on Nick Chubb, running back 1 overall, most likely in our rankings. Be prepared to see that for that week in particular, because no Kareem Hunt in this offense makes Nick Chubb the most elite running back that you're ever going to find. Now, in the case of Najee Harris, clearly, this is a running back getting every single snap, getting every single touch, getting a ton of usage in the receiving game, especially with no Juju Smith-Schuster. You're playing both of these options, and you cannot play Dearness Johnson. For the love of God, do not play Dearness Johnson unless Nick Chubb is a surprise inactive. Now, our next matchup will be the Philadelphia Eagles and the Detroit Lions. With Detroit, I mean, we have DeAndre Swift just good to go. Not much to say. We've already said it all. DeAndre Swift is Aaron Jones. He's Alvin Kamara. They're all the same running back. Now, in the case of the Philadelphia Eagles, this is a little bit of a more difficult position to take, just because with Kenneth Gainwell, while we're projecting him to be that starting running back, we have to ask ourselves what exactly the breakdown in touches looks like at the running back position for this Philadelphia Eagles offense. You would imagine that you get Kenneth Gainwell clearly as that running back 1 that is expanding his own role. But beyond that, what are the touches for Boston Scott? And what's really worrisome is Jordan Howard is going to be active this game. So we're ranking Kenneth Gainwell as a low-end running back 2, high-end running back 3 with upside. He is the player I'm predicting to be the starting running back here. And if you're playing in a league where you have a Saquon Barkley injury, you have a Clyde Edwards-Helaire injury, you have a Christian McCaffrey injury, and you're not going to be getting away from it, you probably have to play Kenneth Gainwell in a strong matchup. The problem is it's just so hard to kind of come out and pinpoint exactly what the workload is going to be this week. Now, our next game with the Los Angeles Rams and the Houston Texans, we got a lot of questions in the live stream last night. Mason, what are we thinking about David Johnson after the trade with Mark Ingram? To be honest, David Johnson so far this season, from a points per game standpoint is the running back 51. He's a running back that I do not think we need to be concerning ourselves with. I understand this offense is going to be better if we get Tyrod Taylor back this week, which is why I'm saying that Brandon Cooks is potentially an intriguing buy low candidate. But here, if you're looking at David Johnson, I mean, what exactly is the upside? Because even if you were to go through and if you were to give David Johnson every single one of those Mark Ingram touches, all of a sudden David Johnson becomes a high-end running back 3, low-end running back 2 in an offense that literally cannot score the ball. Now, I will say that that's not even going to be the case. You're not even getting Mark Ingram 100% of his touches to David Johnson. They're going to be split between Philip Lindsay and David Johnson. It's going to be a committee backfield in the worst offense in the NFL in a pretty tough matchup against the Rams. So yeah, I think we're just going to be avoiding David Johnson. Please do not start him. In the case of Darrell Henderson, he is a locked and loaded top 10 running back. This is someone that played 90% of the snaps this past week against Detroit. The production wasn't fantastic. He had the targets out of the backfield. He had the touches. He had the snaps. He's playing in the elite offense. You play Darrell Henderson. Very, very simple. Now, our next game is going to be the San Francisco 49ers and the Chicago Bears, where with Chicago, I know we got a lot of hate on our running back tier list, but we're still not going to be jumping Khalil Herbert up to being a running back 1 in fantasy. Like, I'm kind of surprised to see that everybody's willing to just go through and make that exception for Khalil Herbert. After 2 weeks of impressive performances, I will say 100%. I was horribly wrong on Herbert a week ago when I was expecting that he was going to split the backfield 50-50 with Damian Williams. We were saying that he was most likely going to get the majority of touches, but Damian Williams was going to have the receiving down role, so that was going to make Khalil Herbert in a tough matchup against the Buccaneers someone that we cannot consider starting at all. So I know if you pull up our rankings, we currently have Herbert behind that tier of guys like Damian Harris, Darrell Williams, Zach Moss, Chuba Hubbard, and I know a lot of people hate us for that. And while, yes, Herbert has looked very strong so far this season, the problem is betting on this offense in a tough matchup against the 49ers. Now, I know on the 1 week sample that we have, the 1 week sample of this Chicago Bears offense failing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Herbert was still able to come out and get essentially 100 yards and looked fantastic. Now, I will say, I think a lot of people are overreacting to that one small sample just given how recent it was and that it was last week. If you look at a macro sense, if you're trying to pin down a replacement level running back for one of the worst offenses in the NFL in a tough defensive matchup at the same time, 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be a great play to go with. Now, of course, Khalil Herbert, he's up there in the top 20 running backs. This is a running back that you have to at least pay him his respect and what he's been able to accomplish over the past 2 weeks. But I'm still concerned with this overall offense with Justin Fields in a tough matchup against the 49ers. And then in the case of Elijah Mitchell, I think Elijah Mitchell's neck and neck with Khalil Herbert. I think that he is a running back that you're more confident with his overall offense in the red zone opportunities you may see in Chicago. But JaMychal Hasty actually has the usage in the receiving game. So from a usage standpoint, Elijah Mitchell at this point of the season is actually very similar to someone like Damian Harris. Now let's go to our next backfield. This is going to be the New England Patriots and the Los Angeles Chargers. This game I'm expecting to honestly be a little more high scoring than a lot of people want to assume it will be. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, the Patriots defense, they're going to be limiting what you have with the Los Angeles Chargers. I think a lot of people are just overreacting to what we had with the Chargers and the Baltimore Ravens 2 weeks ago. I think with Mike Williams being fully healthy, this will unlock the Los Angeles Chargers offense where there are really no reasons for concern. Now, in the case of Damian Harris, yes, he's going to be a top 20 running back for us, but we're not going to be expecting that top 10 production where we ranked him in the top 10 last week. We ranked him as a running back 1 last week against the New York Jets. You could have been very excited given the matchup. It's going to be a much tougher matchup here against the Los Angeles Chargers. And here with the Los Angeles Chargers running backs, simple. Austin Eckler is an elite level running back. I mean, you're looking at him coming out. It doesn't really matter the matchup that he has. I mean, even if the Patriots are able to limit the amount of red zone opportunities for Eckler, that's not even what makes him so damn valuable. What makes him valuable is the usage that he has in the receiving game, which there's pretty much no chance that New England can shut that down. Now, our next matchup will be the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Seattle Seahawks going at it. And we know there's a pretty strong rule that if you have a running back going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, you want to be playing that running back, except in the case of Alex Collins. Collins plays in a committee backfield this past week with the addition of Rashad Penny coming back in. And now on top of this, I mean, you have Geno Smith at quarterback. We've already discussed this at length. I mean, we discussed this last week with the Seattle Seahawks and the New Orleans Saints. And we were saying you couldn't start Lockett. You couldn't start Marquez Callaway. You couldn't start Alex Collins. The only players you could start in a game where there are going to be so few plays run were going to be DK Metcalf and Alvin Kamara. Very similar here with the Seattle Seahawks. We only want to be starting DK Metcalf. The problem is they're not going to be running many plays. It's going to be some of the worst efficiency in the NFL at quarterback with Geno Smith, as we've already discussed at length for a very long time now. So with that reason, I do not want to be playing a committee running back in a bad backfield. I do not have Alex Collins ranked as a top 24 option this week, even though it's a great matchup. I will admit it's a great matchup against the Jags. And with Jacksonville, you're going to play James Robinson. I mean, Robinson has completely phased out Carlos Hyde here. Robinson's getting the entire workload. Robinson's a very talented running back. And with the Seattle Seahawks matchup, I will say it's not like you're that worried about the defense. However, I am worried in general, just as we've already discussed, the Seattle Seahawks definitely slow games down where you're not necessarily going to be able to have it where the Jacksonville Jaguars are putting up 30 points on the board. So just given the slow environment of this game, I think it's going to limit the team total that you could see for the Jacksonville Jaguars, which isn't that exciting for James Robinson, but still, you're playing James Robinson. Now our next matchup, Alvin Kamara going up against Leonard Fournette with the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tough matchup for both running backs. And in the case of Alvin Kamara, I know that we actually have the rule that you never play a running back against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I guess Herbert broke that rule last week, but still that's going to be something we implement going forward given how strong that Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense is. But except if it's a pass-catching running back, someone like DeAndre Swift, someone like Alvin Kamara, someone like Aaron Jones, they're going to be able to succeed against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, knowing that this defense is going to be playing in a scenario where, they're leading the majority of the game. New Orleans will be having to drop back to pass. As of now, you've actually had Taysom Hill not practicing still with that concussion. So there's no Taysom Hill. There will be more touchdown upside for a player like Alvin Kamara. You're jamming in Alvin Kamara. Don't have him in that top tier with other running backs like Derrick Henry this week, however. And now in the case of Tampa, I know if you look at the snaps a week ago against the Chicago Bears, you're going to see Keyshawn Vaughn, Ronald Jones showing up and getting usage in this backfield. Well, in reality, it's just because the game got so out of hand that's why they're getting touches. Leonard Fournette is a running back that's seeing damn near every single touch when the game is close. So he's a running back that we're going to be playing in what should be a closer contest between the Buccaneers and the Saints. Now, our next game, the Washington football team and the Denver Broncos love Javonte Williams for the rest of the season. Think he has a ton of upside going forward. Not really excited to play him this week, however. This is a tough Washington run defense to go along with it. Melvin Gordon still is getting that usage, so I love Javonte Williams in the long term. Don't want to be jamming him in this week in particular. Antonio Gibson is a running back that I think, while yes, he's been highly disappointing over the past 2 weeks, this is someone that should be a little bit healthier from that shin injury. We're going to have him ranked as a low-end running back 2, high-end running back 3, and what shouldn't be the best matchup, but I think Antonio Gibson definitely is someone that I know everybody's off of, but I'm not really changing my mind too much. We called him a sell-high running back 3 or 4 weeks ago. We called Antonio Gibson a sell-high running back before you saw that value crater, and I'm kind of saying, he's been dealing with the shin injury. Nothing's really changed for Antonio Gibson. Now, our next matchup, you got the Dallas Cowboys and the Minnesota Vikings. Don't need to speak anything on this. You start Dalvin. You start Ezekiel Elliott. But let's move on to the next team. Okay, so you got the New York Giants and the Kansas City Chiefs. At the time of this recording on October 28th, Saquon Barkley still sidelined at practice. So probably going to get Devontae Booker here. With Devontae Booker, it is probably not the best matchup, knowing that this Kansas City Chiefs team will be leading the majority of the game. Devontae Booker not going to be getting heavily leaned on from the New York Giants. And in the case of the Kansas City Chiefs, I actually think you can start Darrell Williams. I'm going to be ranking Darrell Williams as a top 20 running back this week. I know the Chiefs looked horrible last week against the Titans. We have 3 years to look at, however, the Kansas City Chiefs being a top 3 offense in the NFL. Not expecting him to be that elite number 1 team overall anymore, but still a offense that you can confidently say it is far above average. And if you're going to be getting no Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Williams should see almost every single touch, almost every single snap. So yeah, go through and play Darrell Williams. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Of course, go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Every time you leave that comment, drop that like, you get entered in to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. And if you want a Fantasy Flock Network hat, just straight up, of course, you can go over there, join the flock on Patreon. You can get our rest of season rankings, get a podcast breaking down your fantasy football team, get our dynasty rankings, get into Dynasty League with us, get in our group chat. There's so much over there on Patreon. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And I hope I see y'all with the live stream tonight.